Hello and welcome to TheLines.com NFL Preview Countdown. Each and every team as we head into opening day 2024. Matt Brown, Stephen Andress, and today it will be the Chicago Bears. Outside of the Houston Texans, Stephen, no team getting as much love as the Chicago Bears in the offseason. Go out. Number one pick overall, Caleb Williams comes in, looks pretty decent in the preseason, making some stuff happen. You go out, you trade for Keenan Allen, you sign DeAndre Swift, you draft Rome Odunze, all these things that have the fan base going absolutely wild. And then you get on Hard Knocks and you're seeing the behind the scenes and guys singing songs in their underwear and everything else. It's just fantastic here for the Chicago Bears, a team that did figure out a way to win 7 games last year, fairly interestingly enough, 7-10. And certainly the aspirations are much higher this year.
Do you remember how much of a dumpster fire the Bears were in like week 1 through 3 last year? Yeah. I mean, they were the laughing stock of the league. They couldn't make a spread at the books high enough for people to not want to bet against them. And they still couldn't cover those spreads. And then, as the season went on, defense got a little better, started playing a little more conservative, covered spreads as dogs, won a couple games outright towards the end of the year. And then they get Caleb Williams, right? So now it's like peak optimism in Chicago to the point where their market rating is much, much higher going into the year right now than it was last year for most of the season. So whenever that happens, Matt, I'm going to see if like maybe this is warranted or perhaps we should be pumping the brakes a little bit.
Yeah, so this is a team, guys, one of the rare full win jumps as later on in the process here. This team was 8.5, and if you go to a lot of books right now, it's 9.5 as a win total for the Chicago Bears. There's a combination of things going on. You do see some promise in Caleb Williams. You do get the Hard Knocks effects that is a very real thing that we've seen throughout the course. And then honestly, Stephen, I think people are looking around and they were looking for teams that they want to feel good about and they want to bet. And it seems like, hey, it's a good, fun team that looks like it might be interesting to root for throughout the course of the year. I mean, Keenan Allen and Moore and Odunze and all this. It's like you have an offense where at least the pieces are there to have a really, really, you add in Cole Kmet at the tight end position as well. And then you sign DeAndre Swift and have him come in. Like there's a lot whenever you're looking at this team going, okay, can the offensive line protect even at a league average level? And if the offensive line can protect at even a league average level, you would think that this team could at least produce on the offensive side of the ball. Now, the defensive side, tons of talent, but can they get stuff done there? I'm not even talking about that. But on the offensive side, with Caleb Williams, with all those weapons I just mentioned, if they can get decent offensive line play, it does seem like this offense has some upside.
Yeah, I would credit most of the sacks that Justin Fields took, not to the offensive line. I would credit it to Fields for just being a dope. And
yeah,
people who understand football know that sacks are as much, or if not more, a quarterback stat than it is an offensive line stat. You got to know where to go with the ball. I mean, if you have a questionable offensive line and you have a good quarterback and a coach, you get rid of the ball fast. See Tua in Miami, who led the league in get rid of the ball. Doesn't get sacked as much. So I think the offensive line is fine. I don't think it's elite, but I think it's above average. Here's the question, though, Matt. Let's do a quick litmus test right now. Would the Bears have been a 4.5-point home favorite against anybody in the NFL last year?
Yeah, I know where you're going with this. So in week 1, they are, in fact, 4.5-point favorites as we sit right now. I told you, the steam is there for this Bears team. I mean, like the hype is there. Outside of the Texans, you've heard nothing more about people loving a team more than the Bears.
This is not rookie quarterback treatment, right? This is like assumption that he's going to be, fine right away.
In week 1, I think that is too much to ask. And honestly, if we're just being perfectly honest, and this is getting off on a tangent here, but I mean, I don't know if the Titans are going to be as bad as everybody says too, right? So I mean, like there's also that for me with all of it, but I look at it like this, Stephen, and I look at it from a standpoint of I want to buy into this team maybe a little bit later in the year, where he's got a little bit more of experience and stuff. But like, I think early on, even against these middling teams, that there's going to be a learning curve. It's a great time. They got an awesome bye. Week 7 bye is just awesome when you have a rookie quarterback and you're trying to break things in and all that. Like, awesome bye, and then you get to come out with a 3-game stretch of Washington, Arizona, and New England. Tell me that is not amazing for this Bears team right there. And so, yeah, I once it got to 9.5, full transparency, I took the under because winning 10 games in the NFL is a very hard thing to do. Like, you're not saying that the Bears are a bad team if you're saying they can't get to 10 wins.
I agree. I mean, they might be above average, even with the extra game on the schedule these days. So I think this is a situation where, I'm looking at this defense. We talk about the offense. I agree. Quarterback looks good. Receivers look good on paper. They signed DeAndre Swift, capable backup in Khalil Herbert. Offensive line looks decent. But defense is where we shoot holes in this, right?
Steven, there's only 12. There was only 12 teams last year that got to 10 wins. There's only 12 of the 32 teams that got to 10 wins last year. And so now we're just coming in and like going, oh, Bears, boom, there we go. They're a top 12 team in the NFL. Yeah. And it's like
they're minus money to make the playoffs. You have to lay some juice for them to make the playoffs.
And so it's like, I don't hate this team. I don't hate the makeup of this team. But, Steven, I think what we've had is the prices have gotten so out of whack that you kind of almost have to bet against them. You kind of almost have to fade them because it's gotten to a point where, like you said, you would think that Caleb Williams had 30 starts under his belt.
Listen, if the market's saying this is a 10-win team and we believe they're more of an 8 or a 9-win team, then it doesn't sound like much. But that creates opportunity in the market, not only on futures but week to week, right, Matt, with spreads. So, and if we're right, then at some point it'll correct. But, look at the Atlanta Falcons last year. It took a long time to correct, and you could have made a lot of money fading a lot of those, release services that were sending out Falcons bets every single week last year with Desmond Ridder. So, this may not happen right away with the market adjustment. So, and if you're betting on the Bears to make the playoffs, I don't think anybody's betting them to win the division with the Packers and the Lions in there. So, therefore, you have to have a wild card spot. If we assume 2 teams out of the NFC West and all the division winners, and one of the Packers or the Lions in the North, then for the Bears to make the playoffs, you're basically hoping that they're better than the second place team in the NFC East, in my opinion, and hoping the Eagles or the Cowboys don't make the playoffs. That's what we're looking at here. And based on the price, it implies that they have a better than 50% chance of being better than the Eagles or the Cowboys this year, which that's tough for me to get there, Matt.
Yeah, and I don't want to overemphasize a 10-win season is a really good season. If we look, Pittsburgh finished 10-7 last year. They had to win their final 3 games to even get to 10 wins, right? Houston finished 10-7 last year. They had to win their last 2 games to get to 10 wins. You go down. The Rams finished 10-7 last year. They had to win their last 4 games to get to 10 wins. It took a 2-game, 3-game, and 4-game win streak to get 3 of those 12 teams that we were talking about, Steven, to 12 wins. I mean, to get 10 wins in the first place, right? It's a really good season to go 10-7. And so I'm not trash talking the Bears, and I'm not saying they're going to be a bad team. I'm saying that 10 wins in the assumption of 10 wins is just a little bit too much for me right now. And so I had to, given the number that is attached, play the under. Now, Shane Waldron coming in at offensive coordinator, I think is going to have some success. I think he will be fine. But it's a team for me that at the end of the day, it's a tough division. You still got to play San Francisco. You still got to play Houston. You didn't get any breaks there. I think Jacksonville's going to be better than a lot of people think. So you got that game there. There's just a lot here. We were just, we've done a video already about Seattle in which we think Seattle could actually have a little bit of upside, specifically towards the end of the season as his new coaching staff sets in. And that's one of the games in week 17 that the Bears are going to have to deal with. And so I just don't see 10 wins, though 8 or 9 seems like a very fine season for a team that's that in theory should be on a rebuild.
They have 5 games on their schedule where they're 3-point favorites or larger. Week 1 home against Tennessee, Week 5 home against Carolina, Week 10 home against New England. What else here? Week 12 home against Minnesota and Week 17 home against Seattle. I agree with all those except the Seattle one. We'll see. That's way down the line, but 3.5 against Seattle. That's a little rich. And then they have a bunch of coin flip games. Are they a true coin flip against the Colts on the road, the Rams at home, the Jaguars looks like at home? Like, that's where this is going to be decided, right? Those games against other teams that are projected to be average to slightly above average. Can they compete with the Colts and the Rams and the Jaguars and maybe even the Cardinals this year? That's where this is going to be won or lost in terms of making the playoffs for the Chicago Bears.
And that Seattle game in Week 17, and again, the reason we're bringing that up was because that might actually be a big thing, right? Like that might actually be a game if we're talking about getting a win total over, Stephen. That's one of those dreaded 3 games in 10 days deals. So they play Monday Night Football in Week 15, then a regular Sunday game in 16, and then that's a Thursday night game there in Week 17. Ooh. So it's a Monday night, Sunday night, Thursday night stretch for this team to where they're playing their 3rd game in 10 days. That is probably a pretty pivotal game as far as getting them, over this win total as well. And so just, another thing that just didn't really pan out for them and work all that great for them is a 3-10 towards the end of the season, right? I mean, that's brutal. You're beat up at the end of the year, right? Now you're playing 3-10.
I want to give you my favorite betting angle for the Bears going into the season. I may be betting against them on the spread here and there, and you could watch the Megapod all year to see that. But I think the one thing that I might believe in most is just overs for this team because, I do think the offense could put up some points here, especially if they get behind and they're in chase mode. They have plenty of weapons to be able to go get some easy garbage time points. But it's the defense here. And I did not agree with them retaining Eberflus. I think they should have started fresh. I don't think Eberflus is a great head coach. I don't think he's going to add a lot defensively here with this unit. This talent-wise, this defense does not have a strong pass rush whatsoever, 27th by PFF going into the year. They have Jalen Johnson at corner, which is a good asset, but the rest of the secondary is ranked 19th going into the season. And if we're going to look at just the stats on paper for the Bears and give them credit for the second half of the year where they played above average defense, then surely we have to give some context to the teams they actually beat last year on their schedule. And it is not exactly a murderer's row of quarterbacks, Matt. If you just go back, look at the wins that the Bears had on their schedule, and the quarterbacks they beat were Bryce Young, Aiden O'Connell, and Brian Hoyer, who shared time, Sam Howell, Josh Dobbs, Taylor Heineke, Kyler Murray, and Jared Goff. We'll give him credit for the Goff one, obviously, but for the most part, that is a pretty easy schedule of quarterbacks that they racked up wins against for a defense that was 30th in pressure rate last year and 31st in sacks.
The one thing I will say from a prop market on this team is if you go look out there in the industry right now, Rome Odunze's receiving yards, Stephen, is sitting at 650 and a half at one of the books out there. And, while I think Keenan Allen is still a good receiver in the NFL, we know Keenan Allen's getting up there in age. We know Keenan Allen has had injury history with all of this. I wonder if we are not looking at a situation sooner as opposed to later where Rome Odunze is actually the 2 as opposed to the 3 in this offense. And if that's the case, then 650 and a half is far too low for Rome Odunze. We are talking about a receiver that if he moves into the number 2 here for a team that, especially what you just even said, might be in some shootouts this year and might be having to throw a little bit more and all of that, 650 and a half is way, way, way too low for Rome Odunze. Now, if you don't believe what I believe, and if you think, no, Keenan Allen is still an alpha, then maybe you want to go the opposite direction and all that. But for me, Rome Odunze is actually one that I threw into the account a while ago, and I actually still feel pretty good about it because I'm going into the season under the assumption that at some point he will be the number 2 wide receiver if he's not already the number 2 wide receiver there, Stephen. And so 650 and a half, just too low for me.
Yeah, makes sense to me. He's getting a ton of love in terms of beat reporters and seeing what he can do. So I think he was, maybe not quite in the prospect tier of Marvin Harrison and Malik Neighbors, but it was pretty clear it was him and a big gap to everybody else in this draft class.
Give me 95 targets. Give me 90 targets. If we get 90 targets, we're getting to 651 yards. Like that's happening. And so just give me 90 targets and we will get there with him for sure. All said and done, I'm just super high on the Lions. So never even considered them from a divisional standpoint at all. I think the Packers are clearly better than them too. And so for me, never even considered them from that standpoint.
You can get an exact result at our podcast sponsor, BetMGM. You can get plus 165 on the Bears to finish third place in the division behind the Lions and the Packers, most likely. It's coin flip on playoffs. So if you agree with us and you just want Ben to miss the playoffs, you can get minus 115 on that right now. So there are some like negative outcome markets available for you if you're in line with Matt and me.
I should mention, it was at BetMGM that you can find that 650.5 on Roma Dunze if you want to go in and take care of that. But all in all, again, a team that I'm on the unders and fading a little bit, and it's mainly because, again, not because I dislike the team. I just think the numbers got out of control. And as in a betting market, Stephen, we bet numbers, right? And it's just a deal for me where getting up to asking a rookie quarterback to go out and win you 10 games. We saw one of the best rookie years ever last year out of CJ Stroud, and they only won 10 games. Like, they literally snuck into winning 10 games. They had to win the final 2 games of the year to get to 10 games in all of that. So I just think it's a lot to ask. And so I think he'll be fine. I think this Bears team is set up to be really good over the next 2-3 years.
Arrow up.
Yeah. Arrow up for sure. I just don't think this year we can ask all that much out of this team. So unfortunately, some fades for me, though I am on an over on Rome Odunze. Guys, everything we do, absolutely free. So if you haven't done so already, hit that subscribe button. Let us know what you think about the Chicago Bears team as we head into 2024. And if you want to discuss it further, upper right-hand corner of TheLines.com is our Discord. That also free. Get in there, discuss not only football, but every single sport there is year-round. For Stephen, I am Matt. Good luck on all your Bears bets.